like sometimes I use like old parts. I'm like, oh, what is that piece? I haven't seen it in a set. I'm like, it's older than me, but that's what Lego is meant for. Endless possibilities. You don't need a $3 million collection to build something cool. You just need some creativity.
Hello everyone, and welcome to TFOL Talk, the podcast where we shine a light on awesome teen fans in the LEGO community doing amazing things, and maybe the occasional AFOL too. I'm Doodlebricks, aka Kavi, and today we're going to be hanging out with Adam, otherwise known as Ad the Builder. Hey man, how are you doing?
Hello, pretty good. And yourself?
I am glad to hear. I'm doing great myself, thank you. So let's just
Cool
start in
beans.
with the first question. Who is Ad the Builder, and what do you do in the LEGO world?
Ad the Builder is a broke high schooler who likes to build robots out of Legos. And and recently it's been more focusing on Gundam type, more mecha styled mechs.
Okay, I see. So you say recently then, so did you used to do other types of mocks?
Yeah, about like I think it's 4 years ago now. I was a big vehicles guy. I built jets, I built cars, I built tanks, and then I started building some walkers, and I'm like, I like walkers. Let's see if I can give them some arms, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
I see. So it was a very natural progression from vehicle to robot then.
hmm Like if even if you look at like some of my older stuff, some of them just don't even have arms. It's just more walker type. Back then I was heavily inspired by a game called War Robots, and that's where I got part of the idea to start building robots slash mecha.
I see. Yeah, I've heard of war robots. They're those kind of walker types that just have, massive weaponry
hmm
attached to where the arms would be, I guess. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
That's so cool. So it just progressed from there then. I love that. But yeah, there are really a lot of different types of like mecha and things like that people design, I guess. It's not just a human looking robot.
hmm Yeah, that's for sure. Like lots of people say mech and mecha are the same, when in reality, mech is usually two or more legs. Many times it's like four, six, eight legs. More militarized, Western styling, doesn't necessarily have arms. And then mecha is usually Eastern styling, more anime, Japan related. Almost always has two legs, usually the longer legs, more extreme proportions. And that's usually the main differences between the two.
Okay, because you see, I didn't even know that. Like, I'm a mech guy, and I had no idea that that's what the difference was. I thought it was just two different words for the same thing, but that does make a lot of sense. Because I guess mecha as well is more like you said, like anime robots and like much more exaggerated and that kind of thing. Things like Gundam and
hmm
those types of things. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's good to know. So the next question is, how and when did you get into Lego? Let's just start off with that.
That's a very good question. Got into Lego because probably when I was like 6 years old, my neighbors gave us this big bin full of off-brand stuff. And I was always fiddling with that, was custom building with what I could. I was always short on wheels and those 2x2 tiles. Those are like the most special pieces back in the day. But then when I was 7, I got my first Lego set, and then I kind of got rid of the old stuff because like almost none of it was Lego. And then I just got some sets, got some bulk, and I was always custom building. I never kept a set built more than a day. it was bad, but because of that, I had a lot of really good parts to use. So then I got to experiment with all of that.
Wow. Okay, so you started with off-brand Lego then. Oh my
Hmm.
God. No, but seriously though, that's really cool. I love the fact that you like separated after time. You were like, all right, I found the real stuff. The fake stuff can leave. Be gone with you.
Yeah.
I see though. That's really cool. So that is quite impressive that you couldn't keep a set together for more than a day. Like I think that is the fastest I've heard of anybody like tearing down their sets and putting them in their collection. That's impressive.
I was the kid who would build the Lego set in the car on the way home. And then when I got home,
Oh.
I was like, oh, these are cool parts. Let me try something else. So I'd take it apart like instantly.
Oh my goodness, you were the kid who'd build this set on the way home. I see. That makes sense. I always wanted to
I've
do
never
that, but
lost
I
any
was
parts though. Never lost a part.
really okay. That's even more impressive then. Like seriously, because I'd always want to build sets like as soon as I got them, but I'd be like, damn it, I'm gonna lose pieces. And I think like the only time that I did that, I almost lost a piece, and I was like, never again, not doing this again. So that's pretty impressive.
Hmm.
That's so cool though.
Well,
So
thankfully, I wasn't getting sets that were too big.
yeah, no, that makes sense as well. So that's really cool though that you like would get them and then immediately see the parts and be like, "Oh, these are good pieces. Let me see what I can do with them." Like that shows that you had a lot of creativity from like a young age of just like I want to create my own things with this like right away.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better in like technically speaking, it's gotten better, but it's pretty bad now. So like I'll see a set and my mind doesn't even see the set anymore. I just see a parts list. And I'm like, oh, I can use this for that. I can use that for this. Like the Black Panther set. I saw it and my first thought was overpriced but good parts.
Oh my god, that is hilarious. So have you already taken it apart then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's completely
that
parted out.
That is funny. So, do you like to build the sets first just to see what they're like and then take them apart, or do you sometimes just literally open the set and just part it out immediately?
So it depends on the set. Like, um, the little super robot I got recently, I built that because it's really cute. I built Optimus Prime. He's still built because he's just a special set.
Yeah.
But some sets that I collecting just for like clones, I don't even build. I didn't build like almost any of my 501st battle packs, the new or the old one. The fighter tanks I didn't build. My ATTE I didn't build. But some I will.
I see. Now, that makes sense though. I mean, like Star Wars sets seem like pretty good parts packs, especially for mechs with all the grays and I
Hmm.
guess they don't have joints a lot of the time, but sometimes they do. Depends like the ATTE and stuff like that.
Lots of them even have pretty good white parts like that Republic fighter tank. That
Mm.
canopy, that's like one of the first times that canopy is in a solid color and it's white. I haven't really gotten to use it yet, but it's a really cool piece, especially for building any Gundams. White is like the color you need constantly.
True. You make a good point there. Now that makes a lot of sense though. And so you said you started with, building the kind of bipedal mechs, but what inspired you to start building mechs just generally in the first place?
That would have to go credit going to the YouTuber Chubby Bots. I was
Okay.
always a super big fan of his, and then he started posting more tutorial style videos, and I tried to build his videos, but not gonna lie, since he didn't have instructions and the videos were pretty fast paced back then, I didn't know how to slow down a video. So I would just
Oh,
get lost and I'm like, you know what? Let me try to do it myself. And then ever since I've been building just mechs.
wow. Okay. I see. Yeah, Chubby Bots is great. If you guys don't know Chubby Bots, go check him out. His stuff is fantastic. But I love the fact that because you struggled to keep up with them, you decided to just wing it and do it yourself. Like that is so cool.
It's gotten me pretty far. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, the chubby bots like tutorials and all those are quite good. And I guess now that you know how to slow down the videos, that also helps.
Yeah, for sure. Although I'm just become the person that's like, why do someone else's when I can do my own? So I
Oh
haven't
no.
used any tutorials for a very, very long time.
No, absolutely. That makes sense. Of course, the level that you're at, like that makes sense. See, so we're gonna go into more about that in a minute. But also, if I may ask, how old are you?
I'm 17. I'm gonna be 18 tomorrow.
You're gonna be 18 tomorrow. No
Yeah.
way. Dude, that is so cool. Well, happy early birthday.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, by the time this is out, he'll already be 18, but like still, that's pretty awesome. So, how did you join the online Lego community? How'd that happen?
So it started out on YouTube actually. I'm not gonna give out the YouTube account yet because it's really, really old. But my mom was like, "Oh, these are really cool. You should make videos and take pictures of them so you can keep track of what you're doing." So then I did, and then I kind of fell off of YouTube and then started Instagram because it was easier. I didn't have to make any videos, didn't have to use my voice too much, and especially at that age, like the voice cracks were insane.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but then I just decided to use Instagram as a portfolio to keep track of what I have done through the years.
Okay, I see. I love the fact that your mom was the one to kind of like push you to start doing content. Like that is awesome.
She's still doing it. She's like, "See, I told you to post that reel, and now look at you."
Really? Oh my god. That is so I love that so much. I'm glad to hear that your mom's supportive of your Lego stuff. That is absolutely fantastic to hear.
Yeah, she's definitely the biggest supporter.
That's great, man. My mom was the one who pushed me to get into just Lego generally in the first place, so I definitely get that. It's great. It's great to have someone part of your family there to like support what you're doing, just the things you enjoy like that.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, so as we've already talked about, your main thing is mechs, but how do you go about designing a mech? Like what is the process? Just walk us through that whole thing.
It usually starts with an idea, like a brief idea. So this one started with me seeing the pullback motor and saying, that looks like the inner frame for a Gundam knee joint. And then I tried to make it work, and then came up with a pretty cool joint, and then it just goes on from there. So I could start with a shoulder, an elbow. It just depends on what joint I usually start on, and then it just branches from there. But like
Oh,
design process, I usually try to get the frame done first. So like on the current whip, I don't have any chest or waist armor done, but the frame is there so I can have a good understanding of strength and proportions.
I see. Okay. So it really a lot of the time it just starts from from a design idea and then just goes from there, right?
Yes.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's cool to hear. It's really fun to do that kind of design process, I think, because you're kind of just making it up as you go, but you can really like I guess
hmm
put in a lot of I guess time and effort into that first I guess I like design idea because like that's where it started and then it's just cool to see what kind of builds around that.
Yeah, I like to, that's why I post lots of stories on how I'm building the progress through it. Because if you look at my story highlights, I have lots of little ones that are called build progress. And there's this one that I took to, where did I take it? I took it to Brick Fair, Alabama last year, and then I took it to BrickCon Atlanta this year, but I ended up retiring her. But she started out as supposed to be a two-legged alien person type thing, and then she ended up being someone more like Darling in the Franxx, just because of the way the thought process goes. Ideas change. It's very, it's very unpredictable. That's why some people comment like, "Oh, is it going to be this Gundam? Is it going to be this?" And I'm like, I don't know, because it's usually inspired by a lot of different things, but it's always my own, and I it's usually quite different at the end than how I originally imagined it.
I see. That's really good that you take like I guess inspiration from a lot of different sources. Like that's I think how a lot of the best things are made. But that's cool that you have a like a very flowy build process. Do you like ever plan out a build like fully, or is it always just kind of going with the flow?
I tried to in the beginning, but it never worked out very well. So it's almost always go with the flow. Sometimes when I'm building something much bigger, though, I have a pretty good idea of what I want to accomplish from the beginning. Like that one over there, the pretty chunky one. I was like, this guy's going to be thick because I built the head and it was originally super angular like the XI Gundam, but then I switched it to be more chubby like Virtue. And I was like, okay, this guy's going to be thick. It's going to be about this tall, and we're going to go with it. And it worked out. But when it comes to exactly how it looks, never planned out.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess like I think planning does work for some people, but a lot of people like you as well. It can sometimes I guess hinder creativity, no? Because you just kind of things happen along the way, right?
Yeah, because you find different pieces while you're looking through all your bulk. You're like, oh, this would look cool here. And then it ends up having a different style, a different shape, and then you roll with it, and then it's drastically different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That thing with like finding a piece and then that completely changing how things look. Oh my God, that is very relatable because it can just take one piece to like completely change a whole design. Like it's wild.
That's a big reason why I don't really stress too much about having my parts sorted, because more recently I've started getting my little drawer systems so I can put pieces that I use all of the time. But if I need like some weirder piece, I'll just look through all of my bulk, and then I end up, if I'm looking for one piece, I'll end up with like a small cup, small pick a brick cup full of stuff that I'm like, oh, I can use this. And then by the end of it, I have a whole table full of parts.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel that. I can see in the background you have all the like the drawers and all pieces just across the long table. But that's the build
Yeah,
process. That's what you sign up for when you become a mock builder.
exactly. You gotta have the space, you gotta take your time. You can't rush it too much unless you need to finish something in time for a show. But
Yeah, exactly.
there will be mess. There will be mess.
There will be mess. It is inevitable.
Indeed.
So, how do you approach making joints in your builds sturdy then? Because you really, most of the time, you really make very flexible mecha and mechs. So, how do you do that while making sure it can still stand and be posed?
So it's usually a good combination of position and um, what's it called? Friction, position and friction. So there are some parts that you can add to the female side of ball joints, and they have a little rubber piece on the inside of them. They were really common in the new Edge, the newer Bionicle sets. That's really good if you're using any kind of ball joints, or you could just use more ball joints. So some of these I'm using two, four, six ball joints just to have enough friction. And then if you really need it, I'd recommend using the click joints, either the Technic or like the Exo4 style ones. And then worm gears and turntables. Worm gears, turntables, and linear actuators really help if you want to build something bigger without needing a stand.
Okay, that's interesting. Worm gears. How would you use those in stabilizing joints?
So the one I'm working on right now and the one I just finished in a couple months ago. They both use worm gears in the hips. So I have a worm gear next to a turntable, a Technic turntable. So when you turn the gear, it turns the turntable, which in turn turns the hip. Um,
Okay.
a lot of turning going on, but that worm gears don't allow anything to be rotated on its own. So you have to manually adjust it for it to move versus like a ball joint, if there's too much weight, it's gonna flex, it's gonna bend. And
Oh,
then
I
your joint will
see.
move if you have too much weight on it. That's why if you see lots of the bigger builders like Brakefield, Brickmaster, Stout Bricks, even the Lego Dark Knight, that's primarily what they use for their bigger joints.
Okay, I see. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So with a worm gear, if it was in there, if it was in like, the torso, you couldn't turn it. You'd have to turn the knob that is directly connected to the worm gear to move it then?
Yes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I never thought about using them that way. I didn't even know that, like, of course that's what they're for, but man, that never dawned on me. That is a very good technique though.
Yeah, it's really important, especially in like the big black one that I have. I don't even know what to call it, but it
It's
has
kind of Zaku
a
looking,
big
right? The one with
turntable.
the hands that
Yeah,
disconnect.
Zaku Sazabi. Yeah, I love that one. But it has the worm gears for the waist and the hips. And then to get the outstretched movement like this, it has linear actuators for the hips, the ankles, the knees, even the torso has like three linear actuators. And since the arms aren't too heavy, I have click slash ball joints being used for that.
Okay, I see. And for anybody who doesn't know, what's a linear actuator?
So a linear actuator is basically a little piston that if you turn one end, it basically goes like this. It outstretches forward and it comes back in. And it can only be adjusted by turning the axle point at the bottom.
Okay. So it would be like an axle connected to like a. Hold on, I'm having trouble kind of picturing. I mean, there's going to be an image on screen for other people, but
For sure, for sure. Let me see if I can find one. So this one, there's a linear actuator right here.
I see. Okay.
And it's connected up here. And if I adjust this gear, that's how it moves. I don't really
All
know how to
right.
describe it.
I can see what you're saying. I'll put that on screen so people can kind of see how that works. But that's so clever. I have never thought about using joints, like I guess pieces like that to stabilize mechs. I'm not very good with Technic pieces, so that stuff it just doesn't even cross my mind. But those are such clever ways of stabilizing them. Wow. That makes a lot
Yeah,
of
I
sense.
would definitely recommend messing around more with Technic because once you get to a certain size, it's not only recommended but mandatory if you don't want to have a stand.
Yeah, no, exactly. That makes sense. And how do you so those joints are more used for things like hips and waist and stuff like that. How do you go about making sure that things like knees and ankles are stable? Because I think arms usually are fine, but it's usually the legs that struggle.
So knees, I like to use that Technic clicking joint a lot. The chunky one I have uses six of them per knee
Wow.
because he's
The hold on, the ones you're talking about are just so I'm clear. These ones if I'm correct, right?
yes, I don't have any spare ones at the moment, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
you're using six of those for the knees of your current one.
per knee. Um that's the one being that's the knee joint for the most recently built one. You can also use gears. On my smaller ones, I like to use ball joints, but like four of them, four or more, because that allows you to have the double joint with maintaining some good strength. And then
Yeah.
The big one has a leaner actuator for the knee because he's just too chunky.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How do you use gears in the knees? I'm curious. Do you use them to add friction?
So you can add friction. You could also just use like that little um. Here's one. You could use the little worm gear boxes with the gear, so
Oh,
you could like stick that
okay.
on thing and then turn it, and then that can be your knee joint. I don't use that too often, but if you have ball joints close enough to each other and you have a double joint, the gears can be next to each other so that they move with each other instead of like one side going.
I see what you're saying. They're on the same kind of, I guess, trajectory, so they don't separate at all. They're just constantly turning
Hmm.
alongside each other. Wow, dude, you are helping me out just by saying this. Like I'm already thinking of ways to strengthen mechs. Wow, that is incredibly impressive. And did you come up with all these techniques yourself, or have you learnt them, or a mix of both, or how's that happened?
Yeah, it's a pretty healthy mix of both, especially when it comes to like the use of those friction tubes and worm gears and stuff. I look at other people's work a lot, and then from that, I'm able to basically draw ideas, adapt it to my own uses. But like some stuff like that most recent knee joint I built, that was 100% me. I've never seen a pullback motor for a knee, so
Yeah, that's my god, a pullback motor. Question: how does that affect the knee? Does it like make it so the knee doesn't stay closed? It'll just pop back since it's a pullback motor, or is nothing connected to the actual pullback part of it?
so the pullback part of it is being used as the pivot position, and then I have like six of those friction tubes attached to it so that it has enough strength. But I did turn it a little bit so that it naturally wants to go back to a standing position instead of a flex position. So it gives it a little bit of
Ah,
strength, but not too much.
that's cool. Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you have managed to take the pullback feature to use it as just a tiny bit of strength reinforcement. That's impressive. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I've never heard of anybody using a pullback motor in a mech build like that. That is pretty damn cool, man.
It, it's mainly there for the looks. It just looks good.
I see. Oh, that makes sense. So that a lot of these, I guess, techniques you've been talking about are work for larger scale mechs that are quite big. So you have the space to use Technic pieces and gears, things of that sort. How do you go about reinforcing slightly smaller mechs that you maybe don't have enough space to add all of these Technic bits to?
So for smaller ones, I usually like to use lots of ball joints, of course, for the knees, the ankles. Ankles are really important because that keeps your guy from going back and forth. So I'll ha usually have a primary ball joint and then a support in the back that has that friction tube connected to both the shin and the ankle. So when you move it this and forth, it's like it has a piston in the back.
Ah,
And then
that makes sense.
knees, I like knees, use ball joints. Hips, lately, if you're building big enough, I'd use the new piece Lego came out with that
Yes,
comes in a lot
the
of newer Ninjago mechs and dragons. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know the name of it either, but once again, image on screen. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good piece. It's a good piece.
Right? It is like fantastic, especially because you can connect it to part of the long click joints, or you can connect it to another side of it to like the black side, which is kind of like the opposite version of it, I guess. It has pinholes instead of pins. Once again, you people watching can see the picture on screen, and we know what we're talking about. But yeah, that's so cool because like often I struggle when it comes to knees, and I think that's why Lego as well doesn't put a lot of knees in their mechs because it's always really hard to
Hmm.
reinforce those and keep it at like a decent size because if your mech is small enough then like you can just use just like a normal ball joint or click joint or something of that sort. But when you kind of get to that mid scale of like not a huge mech, but also not a tiny one, it can definitely become difficult because the mech will still have enough weight to like make it topple over if the knees aren't strong enough, but finding good pieces that look kind of clean enough, I guess, to keep it stable and techniques is also kind of a pain as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just don't, probably my biggest tip for that is compounding. So, like that chunky dude who needs six of those Technic clicking joints. If one doesn't work, use two. If two doesn't work, use three. And if you can, use four. Just use enough so that you can get it to work. Yeah, and that can apply to virtually anything like ball joints, clips, those clicking clips. Just using more of it and even adding like other types of support usually helps.
I see. So do you mean like mixing in kind of different joints in the same area to kind of support each other?
Hmm.
Okay. So for example, using kind of like click joints alongside ball joints or something of this sort, right?
Yep, like the shoulder for one of mine. The initial joint is a click joint to go like this, but then the pivot is a ball joint. So
Okay,
that way you
I
got the
see.
flexibility of a ball joint, but the strength of a click joint.
I see. So the click joint helps it go outwards, and then the ball joint will get the rest of the mobility, I guess, then.
Hmm.
That makes sense. Okay. That's really clever, I think. Mixing different joints like that in a small space seems like a very good way of doing that for sure. I was gonna say I came up with this. Okay, I think I came up with the technique, though I have seen one other person do it, but they did it after I came up with the technique. So I'm still saying it's mine until someone else claims it. But it's kind of for like slightly smaller mechs, but like that kind of mid range. So like this one, for example, I just took the joint out, but I'm actually quite proud of it because it's compact but quite strong. You've probably thought of it, but it's using the those short bars, those new ones with the little. Hold on, let me just take it apart real quick. It's using. There we go. One of yeah, so it's
Is it
using one of
the two by two
these
round
bars
with the bar,
in the middle to
those
give it more
bars, and then
friction.
you, yeah.
Yeah, so that goes in between.
Hmm.
It like that they get really strong because of that. I just remember I thought about it one day and I was like, let me test that out, and it works, man.
Something I also liked to do, I like to do this a lot. If you want to use that same joint while having it be a little bit thicker, you can transition that to be for a bigger mech. So, like on one of mine, is unfortunately he's in a box right now. Actually, no, I have another one right here. So I have an elbow joint right here,
Yeah.
and I believe there we go. It's really tight because it has an axle going through it.
Oh. Oh man, I never thought. So wait, but that increases the friction? Is it because it pushes the pinholes
It
in a
pushes
little bit?
it push it pushes them out a little bit,
That
and
yeah, sorry.
then since it's also a little bit bigger than the gap between all of these parts, it also adds more friction to that. So I
I
usually make
see.
my little you make the sandwich and then you stick it in, and then it helps a lot, especially when it comes to the pieces just falling apart, because sometimes that can happen in
Of
this type of
course.
joint. But that helps it it keeps it all together. It's like glue.
I see. You have absolutely saved me, man. That is an incredible technique, and I will be using that for sure. Thank you for that. Oh my god. That is amazing. Yeah, because,
There you go. It works
yeah,
perfectly
there we
fine.
go. That is strong. That's amazing because I have used that technique just without the pin in the middle of them because I know that's a pretty common technique now. And while that is decently strong, I'd say like I use that on my my terabytes mech arm here for the
Hmm.
elbows. But the thing is, it's decently strong. But I did try that on this mech that I'm building for Virginia, and it worked. But when I added more weight to it, this thing actually ended up being stronger than that. But if this continues to get heavier and this doesn't work, I might be switching to that because that's really good.
Go for it.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
found that
I came up with that because the main issue with this type of joint is the studs wanting to come off of the
yeah,
pinholes, but that little axle helps keep it all together.
yeah, exactly. That's such. So you came up with that technique yourself then?
I don't think I've seen it, but yeah.
I see. That's clever. That's kind of like a really good example of kind of taking a technique and improving on it even more, because you took the
Hmm.
idea of that technique using the rounded plates and whatever the ones that don't have anti studs on the bottom are called, and using that to put into the pinholes, but then adding on to it by adding the pin in the middle of them all to add more friction. That is incredibly clever, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to be using that. And I think this one, I'm also glad that I came up with this because it's good for slightly smaller mechs that still what's it are weighty, I guess, and it does not take up a lot of
Yep.
space. So
Chunky.
that's great. Right? Chonkier mechs exactly. Plus double
Yeah,
joints
good for the
like
chunky ones.
yeah, double jointed as well. Like that one as well. So that's great. My god. When I discovered double joints, it changed mech building forever.
For sure, it makes it so much better because if you have a single joint, usually the best you can do is a right angle. But like the elbows on the one I'm currently working on, you can touch his shoulders like this easily.
Love it. Love it. All right, so I think this is a good place. So this isn't necessarily a question, though it was submitted in the viewer questions thing. It's more of a nice statement from Marcus Lego Artist, who was also on the podcast before. He said, "All I can say is, wow, you're awesome." So that's from Marcus.
Thanks. Thanks, my dude.
So, do you see Lego being involved with your career in the future, or do you see it remaining as a hobby?
Um, I don't really know yet. I know I'm graduating soon, probably going to take a gap year to figure out what exactly I want to do, but it ha has helped me figure out some of my strengths. Like now now I've discovered that I'm a very creative person. I'm good at problem solving, innovating, changing things to make it better. So something like making prosthetics has been on my mind,
Oh,
or even anything in that more robotics, joint related world. Not so much as like making something a usable product, but coming up with the ideas that can be improved on. That's what I'm good at because I hate math.
oh yeah, that's fair. I don't blame you there. That makes sense though. Okay, so maybe something in that kind of like, I guess, kind of like engineering field in that space of things. That makes sense. I've never heard anybody in the Lego community talk about maybe going into like making prosthetics or something, but that does make a lot of sense, honestly. Like that's so cool, man. Yeah, because I guess
I
with your
mean, the
your
joints are usually, yeah,
no, sorry, what were you saying?
the joints I are what I usually focus on the most. I'll spend the most time on the joints and making sure they're perfect, have tons of mobility. Like I've been really trying really hard to get the butterfly joints so that they
Yeah,
can like put the shoulders back and forward. It's just anything like that, something that's strong and usable.
that makes sense. And that's I guess that's a very important area to focus on because if the joints fail, then everything else does as well.
For sure. I'm not building statues, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely that makes a lot of sense. So, what is it like being a TFOL for you? Do you or have you ever faced any judgment from people because you're into Lego or nah?
Well, definitely as I was growing up, there have been some people that are like, aren't you too old for Lego? What are you gonna be? What are you doing? You know, grow up, go play some sports. But then once I got older and I got way better at it, people are like, "Oh, you're doing this? That's so insanely cool." And how old are you? They're like, "What?" Like at conventions, when they hear I'm like 17, they're like, "You gotta be lying." It's it's mostly positive, mostly positive.
All right. I'm glad to hear. Yeah, I think that like I think that's probably the most common thing that, we get is just like the kind of comment of like, "Aren't you a bit too old for that?" or something, those stupid things. But that's great that like people have been, I guess, like praising you for the amazing stuff that you can do at the age you are. Like it is genuinely quite astounding. So I'm glad to hear that you've been getting praise for the crazy stuff you do.
If anyone brings up, "Are you too old for this?" Just bring up like the Millennium Falcon and be like, "Well, what 12-year-old is buying this set?"
Right, exactly, with the whole 18 plus stuff. It's like, come on, really? Like,
I
you
mean,
know.
Lego is for everyone, for all ages, all types of people. So definitely don't exclude yourself either if you think that, "Oh, I am too old for this." Because I've met people that are like that, like, "Oh, I used to do this, but now I think I'm too old. I grew up." And I'm like, "But it's cool." And they're like, "Yeah, it is cool." I'm like, "So you want to get back into it?" And I'm like, "Nah."
Yeah, right? It's so weird how people will want to, but they just don't anymore because of that.
Hmm.
It's kind of sad, honestly, but it's great when we're able to, like, convince, like adults to get back into it. That's like, that is, I think, a great achievement for a Lego fan is indoctrinating more of us.
Yeah. It's definitely funny when someone comes up to you and they're like, "Oh, now I want to go home and build a mech." And I'm like, "Yes, another one
That
of
is
us."
That's so cool. It's great to be able to inspire people, especially people older than us, to do this kind of thing. Like, I think it's very exciting when that happens.
For sure, for sure.
I remember we had some people over, and it was this guy and his wife, and he was so like into all the Lego stuff that I was doing. And then I was telling him like, hey, you can check out this YouTuber, this person, this people doing all this stuff. And then when they left, I said to his wife, I was like, I'm sorry for I'm sorry for what's gonna happen to your guys' bank account after this, but
Yeah, because then they're gonna buy the Legos, and they're gonna have to buy a storage building for all the Legos, and they're like, "Oh, time
hmm
to buy a house to put all
yeah.
the Legos in, make ourselves a little mini museum."
Oh man, that is funny. But yeah, no, definitely. And of course, your mom is also, like you said, has been very supportive of your Lego passion. So that's amazing to hear, honestly.
Yeah, she was like, "Make sure you get your school work done first, but then after that, you're good."
That's so cool. I love that. And do you have any like in-person friends who are also TFOLs or just into Lego generally?
I got some, not too many. A good bit of them are like younger people at work.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of us, and we'll go down to like Atlanta Brick Co. sometimes, go to shows
Oh.
together. It's pretty fun.
Okay, that's
But
cool.
I'm also like the youngest one in the group, so I don't know if I can talk about the TFOL part on that.
Okay. But you have friends who are just generally into Lego then.
Hmm.
I see. Okay, that's awesome. Like I wasn't sure if at first when you were saying that you just meant like yeah they just kind of like Lego but like they're not crazy into it. But no, if you guys go to like Atlanta Brick Co and stuff like that, they're definitely into it a decent amount at least. Like
Yeah, I'm getting them into the mocking. I'm still telling Benji, build a Gundam. If he's listening, he's got to
speaking
build
of
a Gundam.
that, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the other viewer submitted questions. Well, okay, it's not actually. Yeah, Benji Bricks said, "Should Levi build a mech?" And then he put in brackets, "Trust me, this is a good question."
Yes, Levi. I've been telling him to for like 3 weeks. I have a frame for him. He needs to build the Gundam.
Okay, you've got him set then. May I ask who is Levi and why should he build a mech?
He is a pretty cool coworker. He's one of the boys. He's one of the boys.
Okay, I see. And you've just been trying to get him to build a mech then?
Well, he mentioned one day he was like, "Oh, maybe I should build a Gundam. Maybe I should try building a mech." And then I was like, "You told that to the wrong person. I'm not going to leave you alone until you do it." And I've been not leaving him alone this whole time.
Right? Exactly. You can't say that around like a mock builder. You can't just say, "Oh yeah, maybe I build this," because we're not going to leave you alone about it. Like you've made the commitment now. It's no longer a maybe, it's a you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I see. That makes more sense. I had a feeling you would understand that question. I was like, let me throw that one in there. And I guess while we're on viewer
Yeah,
submitted
I know
questions,
this guy.
yeah. And while we're on viewer submitted questions, there's another one from Alex Bailey with a lot of Y's. How much would you suggest spending before attempting to build a mech of this size? By this size, I assume they mean like the general size you do, which is like decently big, I'd say. Too huge as well.
Um, so if you want just the parts to build one, I'd recommend just mocking one up in Studio and seeing how much the pieces are on there. But it's just a growing collection because you start out building small because you can't start out building something big. You have to start from small. Mine started like a couple inches tall and now they're 2.5 feet tall. But your collection will grow with you and so will your mocks. So if you want to build something big right off the bat, it's going to be a couple $100 for just the parts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I definitely agree with what you said there, and I think as well, like, it's good to kind of start with what you have because then you see like kind of what you're in, like what I guess type of, I guess in this case mechs it is that you're into building, and then you'll know more specifically what the general types of parts you need are. Because if it's just like I want to build a mech, generally that could entail, besides joints of course, any kind of parts. So it's good to like just
hmm
start with what you have, I think, and build, I guess, a catalog of pieces that you need.
It also helps a lot with being resourceful because back in the day, of course, I didn't have a billion joints to make these things. So I'm like, oh, I don't have this piece. What can I do in place of that piece?
Yeah.
It opens more doors, pushes you to be more creative. I didn't buy too many sets when I was younger. I'm getting more into it now, because I can afford it with a job. But I bought a lot of bulk, a lot of used bulk, and that really allowed me to like absorb other people's collection of parts and allow me to have a lot of variety. So like sometimes I use like old parts and I'm like, oh, what is that piece? I haven't seen this in a set. I'm like, it's older than me. But it yeah. But you getting used bulk is not a bad way. It's gotten a lot more expensive nowadays. I think it's like 15 to $20 per pound. And back when I
Hmm.
was buying, I would buy 50 pounds for like $100. But
Okay.
use what you can, allow yourself to keep growing your collection. Don't be afraid to take apart sets. That's what Lego is meant for. Endless possibilities. You don't need a $3 million collection to build something cool. You just need some creativity.
Absolutely. I envy your ability to just take apart sets like immediately because I want to take apart sets often because the pieces are like, oh, I could do so much cool stuff with that. But I get attached to the builds. You can see I'm not very good at taking apart my sets. But yeah, that's
hmm
definitely a good thing to be able to do. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I was gonna say as well. I think I liked what you said about using old parts because a lot of them are really helpful and have some great connections. Like from the homemaker sets that came out in the 70s, I think that no, yeah, before the minifigure or around the time the minifigure came around, their hands that they used, they were mixo ball joints with a stud attached to them essentially, and they don't make those anymore. But
Hmm.
those allow for very good connections. And they had a similar one as well, which is a clip attached to a mixel ball joint, which also I don't think is in production anymore. But like those are great pieces, and they're like you said, they're older than us. But yeah,
Yeah, using a good mix of old and new pieces, like using older pieces was like more of the thing a couple years ago, but now more and more new pieces. You got the new angles, you got those little triangle tiles. We just have so many new pieces that a good, healthy combination of both can take you a long way, and that's how these people can build really, really cool looking stuff.
yeah. No, the influx of new pieces and especially like detail pieces has been great. And like some of I think one of the Speed Champion sets has a bunch of very helpful pieces for mech building, like the 1x3 rounded plates and that it's like a 1.5 plate tall thing with like a stud on the side that's rounded on the
I think
back. That's
it's
that's gonna be
it's
great.
it's 2 plates tall.
2 plates tall. Okay, yeah. No, you're right. That's gonna be great for like butterfly joints on small mechs and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I've really loved Speed Champions. Those are great sets if you wanna, let's say you have yourself a frame already built and you just wanna plate it up. Speed Champions, you just like buy one car, you use most of the pieces from that car, and then you're usually pretty
Really?
golden on like a little build this big.
Okay, that's good to know. That makes sense, I guess, because the cars are, designed to look aesthetic. So you got the good pieces there to plate up a frame. That's awesome. So, if Lego was going to start focusing on teens more, like how they have with this whole adults welcome campaign, what do you think they could do for TFOLs?
That is actually a really good question.
Thank you.
So, probably focusing on bigger, less expensive sets, if you know what I mean. So, like lots of these 18 plus sets are usually really big and really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But something like the botanical flowers, I know so many teenagers that buy those. So many. It's insane. That plus, if they focus on something that is more popular to teens, so like probably more game related stuff, because like Minecraft, teens are into Minecraft, but the Minecraft sets feel pretty middle school, pre-middle school set oriented.
Yeah.
But like small like the dioramas in Star Wars, those are good teen sets. Teens just like I feel like we want something that's pretty cool, but not super big because we can't afford something super big.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's very good. Especially the like slightly lower priced sets but that are still have good build quality, right? I think that's very important because once again, like you said, a lot of teens don't have the money to get that stuff. And especially with the reveals and leaks now of sets, like granted they're awesome, but like every other set is like 100 something plus dollars or whatever's, and it's kind of getting ridiculous. So I definitely agree. That's good, as well as like you said, the flower sets. I know, like you said, those are selling very well, and they're well built as well. And there was something else you said as well. It was the I definitely agree with things that are more relevant to teenagers as well. I definitely think that's a good thing. Well, I'm not a gamer myself. I think that some more video, some more relevant video game themes would be great to do sets on because you can make them kind of more uh, focused for teenagers. You can do it on teen rated games or something like they've done Overwatch, and those sets are pretty cool. So I think they could do that.
Yeah, some sets that are already out that are really teen oriented, like mostly teens buy them from what I've seen, are like the BTS set, the Horizon, sometimes the electric guitar, stuff like that. So like if you go games wise, Titanfall would be so cool. That'd be
Oh my
so,
god.
so, so cool. And I really, 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 really want them to make a Lego Gundam because I feel like Gundam is having a big rise in popularity. They're doing lots of collabs with people. They've done some like
Really?
computer stuff. Um, they have some Gundam Nikes. Those are really cool.
Ooh.
Um, and really expensive, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I just know more and more and more people that know what Gundam is. Last year at Brick Fair, Alabama, I brought Gundams and everyone's like, "Oh, are those Transformers?" I'm like, "No, it's a Gundam." They're like, "What's a Gundam?" And this year at BrickCon, it was actually kind of saying people would pass by my table and they're like, "Oh, look, it'd be like adults or teens telling people around them, "Look, it's a Gundam. It's a Gundam." Like only like
Ah.
two people called them Transformers that entire weekend. It was like
Wow.
almost everyone was recognizing them as Gundams, which is kind of bonkers to me.
Yeah, that's so cool. I didn't realize that Gundam was kind of, I guess, rising in the pop culture, I guess is the way to say it. But that's great to hear. I love that. Like I only got into it just over a year ago now, but I'm glad to hear that more people are starting to be aware of what they are. That kind of pains me though that people call them Transformers, like ow. But yeah, that's cool to hear, man. Like I mean for me, I knew what Gundam was vaguely, but like I couldn't tell you much about it. But yeah, that's great to hear that it's been growing in popularity. Do you think it has any? Do you think it has anything to do with the recent series, The Witch from Mercury?
Um, I don't really think so, honestly. I just think it's a rise in Asian culture being popular generally because you have a lot more people who are into anime and they get into the um Gundam animes, so that could help. There's Gundam in general is also doing a lot of collaborations, which helps a lot. People are like nowadays kind of obsessed with Japan, and one of the biggest things in Japan is Gundam.
Yeah,
And now I see it on the media all the time. I hear friends talking about it while I'm passing by. I see people
really,
wearing Gundam merch. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
man, that is awesome. I'm glad to hear because Gundam is flipping epic, and it needs to be needs to be known more. So I'm very glad to hear that. And I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind. But yeah, that's that's fantastic. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Yeah, I also think on the on the subject of like the video game sets, I think if they did some Minecraft sets in like a diorama style or more of a 18 plus style where they felt more filled out and kind of like if anybody knows Cheesy Studios and his Minecraft series, he does very accurate Minecraft builds at a decently like good scale, so they wouldn't be too crazy big, but not crazy, I guess, small either. But they're modular, so they kind of split up like that, and they're very accurate, proportion wise with like the blocks and all that. So I think if they did sets kind of akin to that style, that would be very good as well.
I feel like there were sets like that where they were really small, probably about that big, and they had the Minecraft characters being like one stud big. They'd be a little taller, and they had some interesting printed pieces that came out there, but they were really, really small. Those were great sets.
Yeah, the original Minecraft ideas sets before the theme properly started. I remember those things. Those were cool. I mean, like personally when I was younger, I did think like, "Oh, this is boring. You can't play with it." But I do see how that would be good for like a display piece on a desk or something like that cuz it's a chunk. So, that makes sense.
hmm Like my Optimus Prime, I'm not playing with him, but he looks really good on a shelf.
Right? Yeah, I can attest to that. Mine's up there as well. He looks just epic standing up there.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the current mechs that Lego makes now, and how do you think they could be improved upon?
Don't get me started.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. We're all ears.
The big ones are getting way better. I actually really like them. Like Nia's mech, that one's really cool. Um, Jay's mech is really, really cool. I like that one. The swords, oh my gosh, I love it.
Oh yeah.
But on their little ones, their little ones are terrible. I liked the Nexonite ones, those were cool because you had some joints. You had more than what you have now. Because now you have that weird piece that's like angled and has a circle in the middle. I feel like they could have made that into some sort of click joint. It wouldn't have been too hard. You have the space for it. But then that would give you elbows and knees and then no one would complain. But that's probably my biggest pet peeve with mechs in Lego Ninjago right now because there aren't really any mechs anywhere else
Monkey Kid.
besides like Monkey Kid and but those ones are just cool. Those ones are cool. The big ones.
Yeah.
So like Lego's doing really well on their big mechs, but when it comes to the little ones, the affordable ones, those are not so good.
Yeah. No, I definitely I definitely agree with you for the most part there. It does I have to admit, I don't completely agree with what you said about the Nexo Knights mechs. I actually looked back at those recently and thought that they looked kind of terrible because like their proportions were really like really weird because it was just like one mixel double sided mixel ball joint and then the feet and then it attached to the body and they were very strange looking to me personally. Like I feel like the Marvel mechs are kind of a bit well, the Marvel mechs before they changed the joints were a kind of better evolution of those, I guess. But yeah,
Oh yeah, the little ones in general just all look horrible. But the Nexonite ones were fun to play with because now the big ones yeah, they look beefier, they don't look as skinny, but half the time those joints just run into each other so you can't properly put the arms down. The Nexonite ones were really easy to modify. If you wanted to, you could easily give them an elbow joint with some more mixel pieces, but this new piece doesn't really allow for that. You just have to build a completely new arm, completely new legs.
true. No, you're definitely right. I know that the designer Tooth Dominoes did try to make that joint bend like a ratchet joint in the circle area because he shared sketches that he did for the piece, but I think Lego didn't let that go through. Which, man, I really hope that that does end up happening because that would be fantastic. Because it has anti studs on the bottom, so you could super easily just stack a bunch of them to make a stronger joint. Like that would be amazing.
Yeah, I would love that piece so much. I have a bunch of the current one, and I haven't used them a single time.
Yeah. Now they're kind of they're I see how they're good for younger kids for like quickly making a mech, kind of like how Hero Factory used to be that kind of thing where you could just quickly build a character. But even then, I know like I feel like the Marvel mechs were better in some ways just because they were more posable. And I know the argument is, oh, younger kids, they don't notice the joints missing at the knees, whatever. It's just like you just need to be able to move a decent amount. I don't agree with that. I think younger kids notice that, and I think I definitely did when I was younger. So
Yeah, I
they
tried to pose mine, and all it could do is this. This
right,
is what you did, and you had some of this.
yeah,
Um,
just elbow and wrist movement. It sucks.
I feel like once you get into that argument, you start saying, "Oh, but try out one of the bigger mechs, because those ones now have elbows, they have their hips, they have their knees, they have all the joints to make you happy. I love it. Now they just need to start working on the core." Um, but
Yeah.
then you also start looking at the price points for those, and you're like, $80, $120. It's really expensive because back in the day, like 10 years ago when I was getting into Legos, a big Lego set was $100. And
Right.
nowadays, an an okay Lego set is $100. A big one is a grand, and a good sized set is like $300, which is just insane to me.
Yeah. No, it sucks that like inflation and all that shit like, makes that the case, I guess. But yeah, no, it's not great. I do feel like though, I feel like even back then like they some of the sets managed to work with what they had, if that makes sense, right? So even if they were smaller, they somehow managed to make it work and add as many play features and stuff like that as possible. I don't feel like that's the case with a lot of sets now. Granted, that also being said, a lot of the older sets did not look as great, but it's that
Well,
kind of balance.
I think there's a very happy medium between both, and I'll just say one thing: Exoforce.
Yes, Exoforce. Oh my god. That leads perfectly into one of the other questions I had, which is, so you're an Exoforce fan, obviously, and would you like to see, I'm assuming you would like to see the theme rebooted, and if so, where would you like to see them go with the theme if they rebooted it in the current day?
Rebooted current day, I really liked the storyline that they had. Um, they were trying to go for more like an edgy anime type thing, and I feel like if they go a little bit more in that without it being too similar to like Ninjago, like I don't need to see gold everywhere, no swords, no nunchucks. We don't need any of that, but because we have Ninjago for that. So just make it different enough from Ninjago that it doesn't feel like a competitor and really do focus on probably the 30, 40, $50 range for mechs so that you can really grow your collection. They don't have to be super big, but if they look cool and have cool features, I'm sure it's something that would become pretty popular because Lego really tries to push mechs into everything nowadays, but
Oh yeah.
not into its own designated theme, if you know per se. Because like Ninjago gives us what we wanted from the original Exoforce, but it's different. It's not Exoforce per se. It's just doesn't have the same vibe, doesn't have the same feel. I would love something that has a saw blade for a hand and you have a cockpit inside the torso without a head, just really cool arms. They fly everywhere. It's just mechs fighting robots. That'd be so cool. And with the parts that we have now, I'm sure it would lead to really, really cool sets that look good, and probably they would end up coming up with new parts for it.
Yeah. No, I agree. With what they have now, my god, they could make the most, like, just the coolest mechs ever. And especially if they focused on keeping them affordable, like the original ones were, while making a few bigger ones, like, akin to a Striking Venom set or something like that. And that was really by the way, just on a side note, I think the Striking Venom is like one of the coolest Lego sets ever, like, period. Like, it looks so cool. But,
Yeah.
yeah, like, their sets were affordable and fun to play with. The only thing I will say that's kind of sad to hear is, from what I've heard, I think it was Duck Bricks who said this. Apparently, Exoforce is one of the reasons that we don't get knees in a lot of mechs anymore, because they were kind of flimsy at times, I think, and people were struggling with that, which that kind of sucks. But they know how to do joints properly now, so that wouldn't be the
I
case
mean,
anymore.
that was the early 2000s. You can't expect something that was like that 20 years ago to be at the same standards that we have today. It's like Gundam model kits. I would rarely recommend a kit that is like pre-2010 because like sometimes they're
Yeah.
just terrible. I have a Master Grade Astray. That one was really cool out of the box, but now the knees are getting loose. All of my Iron Blooded Orphans kits, besides my Master Grade, all the high grades are not that great, but they look cool. And if they did them like in the new style that they have now, it'd be way better. But Lego just needs to take that principle. Hey, we're good at this now. Let's dip our toes in the water, see what we can do.
Exactly, and I think Lego has this problem. The corporate side of it, obviously, because the designers are great, but I think they have this issue where if something doesn't work, they get scared and just don't touch it again, and get like, or just assume people don't want it, right? The only thing that they don't do that with is app integrated themes, which that I could go on a whole tangent about that, but like, it's interesting. They'll keep going on things that everybody can predict won't work, like app integrated themes and some of these original themes that, while they're cool, they just don't have that thing that they used to. There's just something about them that's different. But they don't like to go back and try older things. Like, okay, let's do a similar thing to Exoforce. Let's try something like that, or try doing some more Big Bang themes or things like that. They seem scared off when things don't go right, except for Bionicle. They brought that back and messed it up, and now they're never going to go back to it again. But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I believe they were actually labeled for this year the most reputable company in the world, which
Yeah,
is saying a lot because you have hundreds of thousands of companies in this world, and Lego is labeled as the most reputable one, the most recognized,
that's
reputable one. So they
that's
have a really,
impressive.
really high standard to keep up. And now you could argue, oh, what about the clone helmet print? Oh, what about their apps? They're definitely trying to innovate, but they're trying to do it safely because, like, when it comes to the apps, everyone is on their iPad, everyone is on their phone. So they're like, oh, why can't we integrate that with our stuff? Maybe it reaches a bigger audience. It doesn't really work because if you're on your iPad, you're on your iPad. If you're playing with Legos, you're playing
Yeah,
with Legos. I don't even like to use computers for instructions because it just
yeah,
feels wrong. It's not
right.
Lego.
I agree, definitely. That's the thing though. They like to do it safely, but the ways that they're doing it safely, fans are screaming, "Hey, this is bad," and we can tell you it's gonna fail, and then it ends up failing a lot of the time, which is interesting. I feel like they still need to strike a happy medium between still trying stuff that's kind of in a safe way, I guess, but still, I guess, branching out a little bit more, not constantly beating a dead horse, which feels like what they're doing with the app integrated stuff, whether it be the instructions or the games, or I guess trying to mix the games with the sets. I do think there is still a way that they could integrate sets and an app in a good way, and I feel like they have with things like codes that unlock things, stuff like that. But I feel like they just haven't quite hit that good point yet with that. But now, anyways, going back to like the Exoforce thing, with the pieces they have now, like you said, my God, that would be amazing. And people have done Exoforce mocks that could be sets, I think. So once again, like you said, they didn't have many strong joint pieces back then, and the same techniques and stuff like that. So of course they were a lot more flimsy. And if they wanted to do anything else, they'd most likely be illegal techniques or not, I guess, strong enough for like quality standards, I guess. But yeah, now they could do so much.
For sure, for sure. I'd love to see it, but I doubt it'll happen. So I'll just keep on dreaming.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could happen with how much they love doing Mechs and Ninjago and Monkey Kid and Marvel and now Star Wars. There's that Star Wars Mechs. I can't believe that's actually happening, but I'm looking forward to that. But anyways, I think it's possible that they do a mech centric theme. But yeah, Monkey Kid Mechs. Those things are pretty damn cool. I just wish they could give the bigger ones knees, but oh well.
Yeah. Going back to the apps, I'll tell you which was like the perfect medium for the apps. Nexo Knights. You scanned the shields that you got in the sets. You could play with the sets, or if you just wanted to play the game, you could do that. You could get the stuff to play the game in small sets. You didn't have to buy the super big sets in order to play the game, like some of this stuff like Hidden Side. But it allowed you to do either one you wanted or both. It didn't force you to be, I need to take my iPad out and point it at some Lego bricks all of the time, you know.
Yeah.
It was fun too. It was fun. It was a good happy medium between everything, in my opinion.
Well, that's cool. I haven't heard many people say good things about Nexonites in the app, so that's cool to hear that from you. I do have to say, while I still don't think they got it perfect with that, I do think they're kind of more on the right track. I do see what you were saying with like you don't have to have the sets to play the app. I granted, I am like in the middle of making a video now about like the secret sauce to original Lego theme successes, And I do, I do use Next Knights as an example of one that didn't do it quite right in my opinion. But I do have to say I did enjoy the app. I do remember when I was younger, and the issue was, I think, that after a while people just started posting pictures of the Nexo powers, therefore kind of defeating the point of buying the sets for that. I think that was the issue there.
I am guilty of looking up pictures because I didn't want to
Yeah.
buy $100 set for a certain ability. But you didn't have to do it. But like,
Yeah.
you had the little mystery packs that had the shields, I think. Also the little $10 mechs each had a bunch of shields that you could pick from. And it didn't, not having all of the shields didn't stop you from playing the game. It's just there were different abilities. Some were better than the others, of course. Um,
Yeah.
but it wasn't pay to win per se.
No, not at all. You could very much do the game properly without spending any money on Nexa powers. Yeah, it's interesting. I was gonna say with Exoforce, this isn't game related, but I think something else that could very much contribute to the success of a new reboot of it is having a TV show, maybe animated in a similar style to Monkey Kid. Since they're going for the anime aesthetic, Monkey Kid is not anime, but it's Western Sakuga, which is inspired by it. And with that in Exoforce, you see those expressions on the minifigures. I think that could work out so well.
They probably could just make an anime about it. Hire some people from Japan to do it right, you know. But then they would probably run into the issue where you have creative freedoms between um, the animators, the story writers, and the Lego designers, because then you have someone who needs to write the story and design these things, and then you need to have the animators come and say it's going to look like this. But then you have to have designers that are like, okay, I can kind of make it look like that, but not quite to make it a good product. That's where Monkey Kid works, because since you have like the Lego based theme, you have the Lego figures exploring everything. Their stuff is made out of Legos. So you expect it to look like what is in the show. But if you make something that's anime and it looks a certain way and Lego can't quite properly achieve that sometimes, because building a Lego Gundam is hard.
Oh
It's
yeah,
definitely it's definitely not easy to make them look just right. And we use tons of illegal techniques. Our stuff would not be a good product in the slightest, but you just need to be able to have the stuff in person look like what is in the show, which is probably the hardest thing to do.
yeah. No, I see what you're saying. That if they made it like a normal anime, how that would be an issue. Yeah, that is interesting. That's the also I think the other thing like well like a normal anime like they tried to do before but didn't really do that well with like the 3D animated anime thing that was kind of weird. But I think the other thing is like anime fans watching it but not having any idea that it's or not having much of an idea that's Lego related as well. I think that's the but then that could also be good because it could be bringing people into it. So you never know.
I mean, you could also bring that argument to like something like Star Wars. You you
True.
definitely
Yeah.
have loads of people that see Star Wars and like they don't think, oh, I can get that Lego set. But if they go to the Lego store, go on Lego.com, they're like, oh, I know what this is. This is really cool. Like we have someone older comes to the Lego store. They were super big into Transformers, you know, and then they see the Optimus Prime set and they're like, whoa, this is insane. And I'm like, it transforms. I'm like, what? That's even cooler.
True.
But it could have that type of effect. And even so, if they can profit off of the anime itself, this was not too bad. Because I feel like someone my age, like even me personally, I don't really watch The Monkey Kid. I don't watch Lego Ninjago. Because for me nowadays, it's pretty kiddish. Like you don't have, even in those themes, you don't have too many sets that are super adult, super teen oriented, mainly because it is technically a kid's show. But if they try to make something that isn't a kid's show, a more routine show, then you run into whole bunch of issues. So I think it'll take a while to figure out their sweet spots, but they might make it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. I mean, I think with the Star Wars thing, the only difference is that's like Lego sets based off of an existing IP, whereas this would be a show based off of the Lego original like theme. I think that's probably the only difference there. But I do see what you're saying. Honestly, I mean, with like what you said about like the sets, I don't know if I agree with you about like the sets not from like Monkey Kid and Ninjago not necessarily being like the most not necessarily adult. They're not adult, but like I will say that especially Monkey Kid has most of its sets, the bigger ones, have insane build quality, like better than Ninjago a lot of the time almost. Things like the City of Lanterns and the Monkey King mechs, things of that sort for sure. But maybe if they I do see what you're saying about with the shows. Like once you get into it, I'm a big fan of both Monkey Kid and Ninjago. I do see how it is, kind of kiddish at first glance. The shows do go deeper, but of course it is kind of hard to get someone into that if it doesn't look appealing to them at the beginning. But I think something that could be good is something maybe like taking kind of the aspects of like say the Monkey Kid show, because that show actually is pretty dark. It's just very hyper, therefore it seems much more kiddish. But if they just got rid of the hyperness and kind of morphed that into some kind of thing for like Exoforce, I think that could be pretty good, because the characters, they're like their depth and the way they go with the story is quite deep and dark. So I think doing something like that for an Exoforce show could be pretty good. And also just seeing a Lego anime would be kind of cool as well.
I would love to see that happen. Don't know if it will, but it'd be really cool if it did.
You never know. They made once again Monkey Kid, which is similar-ish, and they made a BTS set, which I know that's Korean, but like still that's based off of a K-pop band. So you never know. You never know.
Well, Lego really be pulling some things out of left field sometimes.
Right? I did not think the BTS set was ever going to be made, but I see why they did it. Like the BTS army is insane, so makes sense. But yeah, no,
They're
Lego's been doing
terrifying.
some right. I'm gonna say this. I may get hate for this. I only have two BTS songs just because they're catchy, Dynamite and Butter. But besides that, I stay away from BTS.
I can't get near it. I can't get near the K-pop. It's not my vibe.
That's fair. I do want to get those hair pieces though. That new hairpiece, those seem pretty cool.
Yeah, they are pretty cool. Unfortunately, the only figures I'm really into, Clone Wars.
Ah, really?
Yeah, like I have anytime there's a set with a clone in it, I usually pick it up, if not multiple of them. I got
That's cool.
every single named clone with all of their
What?
versions.
Really? Wait, as in like specific characters, like commanders, or like types of clone?
I don't have every type of clone, but there are a couple I'm missing, like a Shadow ARF Troopers and some Shock Troopers. But um, I have Phase 1, Phase 2 Rex, Phase 1, Phase 2 Cody, Phase 1, Phase 2 what's his name? Gree. I got Fox, I got Wolf, got the Bad Batch, both versions of Jack 14, even like Captain Neo and the other like not officially named, but like named in the shows. I got them all.
Wow, that that was such a big flex right there. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's the only thing I specifically collect in Lego. Because like I
Yeah.
don't collect any sets. I only have 3 sets built right now. And that'd be like Optimus
Really?
Prime, Speed Champion's car because it's like one of my favorite cars of all time, and the big Ferrari. Those are the only sets I have built right now, but the Ferrari will get parted out eventually. So the only things I usually collect,
The green one?
um, that'd be the red 1/8 scale Ferrari.
Oh, okay. I see. But what were you saying before that?
Um, yeah, so the clones are like the only thing I specifically make sure I got them all.
Okay. That's very impressive, though. That's such a great collection of clones you have right there. Like those are the ones everybody wants. So that's really cool. I'm very lucky to not be a huge Lego Star Wars collector. So, I mean, sometimes the clones look cool, and I'm like, man, it would be cool to have that. I'm not paying that money for that though, so I'm lucky to not be in the space of like I want that so badly. But that's very cool that you have all those. Did you just collect those over time, or did one day you were just like, I just want these and
Yeah, I collect
caved?
them over time. Yeah, I collect them over time. Some of my figures I've gotten years ago, and since I had most of them, I was like, why not try to get them all? Because it's something I really like. Like my Phase 2 Rex. I got him back in the day on an eBay lot. He's mint. He's perfect. For like it was a lot with some other figures, and it was like $30 to get him
Okay.
on eBay.
Wow.
And nowadays he's like 300.
True. That was I say wow, but like that was a pretty good deal. Like yeah, no, that's yeah, it's wild how expensive Star Wars figures especially can get now. And like there's no predicting it either. Like some that I would
Mm-hmm.
think would be much more expensive just aren't and stuff like that. So, the world of
Yeah.
collecting Star Wars, Lego Star Wars is wild.
It's very expensive.
Yes, that's for sure. All right, so the second I'm gonna ask you the penultimate question, and then I'll ask you the final one. So, do you have any advice for, I guess, mech besides what you've already given? Do you have any like specific advice for mech builders, Lego mech builders, in any area of it, whether it be like joint stuff or design or just whatever you would like to give?
So, first thing I always love to say, bad hips make the splits. So, one of the most important joints ever are the hips. That stops you from bending back, that stops you from doing a split. Those are usually the most important joints to focus on. So, I usually like to start out with that if I can. And then my other tip would be creativity gives you the ideas to build a mech, and then practice gives you the tools to build what you want. I didn't start building like this. I've been building for, I think it's 4 years now, just mechs, and I'm only this far. These people that you see on the internet, they didn't start doing that. They started small and they got bigger. Practice makes perfect. It's the big cliche, but the more you build, the better you'll get.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's great advice, especially the hips thing. I mean, of course, the more you build, the better you get, but especially the hips thing. That is very, very true.
Yep, bad
I
hips
have
make
to
splits.
absolutely. They're like the besides like they're I think the probably the like just above knees within it with like in the area of importance for mechs. Also, I think something else that I want to give myself is learn from other types of robot models and things like of the sort. Because when I started buying Gundam kits, that elevated my understanding of how to build better joints for Lego mechs with things like their double joints, butterfly joints, just the way they engineer them. Granted, they have a lot more flexibility because they're smaller and I guess lighter than Lego, but looking at just the way the joints connect is really great for building, Lego mechs and other types of robots and things like that as well.
I mean, Gundam kits, that's where I got like the whole idea for armor separation. Because like before I was like, oh, you got the knee joint, make sure the knee armor is big enough so it blocks most of the joint. But like, make the knee armor move with the knee, have the thigh armor move with the thigh.
Yeah.
Even in the forearm, I have some armor separation going on. That's where I got the idea from that. Don't restrict yourself to just Lego or even just Gundam. I like to just look up mecha and then I go through the Google images for like 30 minutes and then I end up finding I used to find like 30 pictures, but I've seen most of them nowadays. So every now and then I'll find a couple that are cool. Something else that I like to grab inspiration from nowadays, which is really, really cool, is not only Gundam, but custom Gundam builders. Because the people
Oh
that
yeah.
really, really modify them, there are people that like paint them, add some more details, but the people that like kit bash, you can find some insane inspiration from stuff like that.
That's good. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know, kit bashing is kind of like what we do with Lego sets, but it's more rare in the Gundam world since it's not really designed to do that. But the idea is mixing together kits as you would a Lego set, basically, and making your own things. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes
I'm gonna.
they make their own parts.
Okay, really? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, kit bashing, that's like a whole other level. I've seen people do that, and I'm like, that would take me a while to learn how to do that. I think I'm gonna stick to my Lego. Thank you very much. But
Yeah. There's this guy on Instagram. Let me see if I can find his account if it loads. This is I found him more recently and I absolutely adore his stuff. But if you just like go through his account, I've been looking at him more recently. I haven't gotten to build anything that's more inspired like that. But me personally, I like to go for the more extravagant, the more extra. Because once you start looking at Gundams, lots of them are the same. And they're like,
I
oh, this
agree.
Gundam is the same as this one. They're very similar. But people like this guy, that's where you can really be like, whoa, I want to build something like that. It'll be really hard, but not impossible.
Yeah, no, I agree. Wow, I'm looking through his stuff right now. It is very, very extravagant and impressive. I agree, though. I think a lot of Gundam really do look the same, which is why, for me, especially, I'm very particular about the kits that I get. But like this guy, man, yeah, I see why you like him. His stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Yamasi MG. Cool. All right. So, the final question is: do you have any advice for fellow TFOLs? Just generally.
Just generally, buy used bulk. If you're buy used bulk, if you want to build custom stuff, I know lots of teenagers like myself, we don't got a lot of money, so don't let anybody say, hey, don't dump your money into this. Yes, be wise with your money, but it's a great hobby to get into, great one to continue. It'll last you a lifetime. And used bulk, if you want to do any kind of custom building, is really, really, really good to especially start out with.
Okay. And where would you recommend people find lots of used bulk?
Nowadays, probably either OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace, something that's near you so you can go drive, pick it up because eBay's really expensive. That's where you pay $20 per pound. Like even more recently, I've gotten 40 pounds. I think it was my most recent bulk was 42 pounds for 45 bucks.
Ooh,
And that's where you get the deals. Of course, once you get better at building, you're like, I need these specific parts. Um, but bulk will give you a good variety to start experimenting with. Once you get better, you know what you need, go on Bricklink, get that. But even me, I still like bulk.
yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because you get like a good array of pieces in them, basically, that you can then play around with. Because sometimes you don't know the exact pieces you're going to need for things. Like you just kind of have to wing it sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you can even find some really cool stuff, like in that 42 pounds. There was like a mint condition Davy Jones, and that's like
Damn!
two to
Really?
that's like a two to yeah, that's like a $200 to $300 figure, and you're able to just sell that on Bricklink and get more Legos.
Oh, did you actually do that?
Not yet. Maybe I
Okay.
will. Maybe I'll trade it with someone to get a Voltron someday. But
Ooh, yeah.
that that's
That's a good
that's my
one.
white whale, the one that got away, because I was broke
Yeah.
when he came out.
Right. Yep. I feel that. I didn't have the money for that either. Then, would if you got Voltron, would you want to modify it to make it more posable?
Probably not. Like if
No.
I
Okay.
wanted a more posable Voltron, I would probably just make my own. But
Okay.
some sets, very, very few sets, like right now it's just two for me, which would be Voltron and Optimus Prime. Those are sets that I like. I want to keep those the way they are. So I can be like, hey, that's what Lego did, and this is what I did. You know?
Okay.
It's just something
Yeah.
really cool. If Lego does it good enough, I'll leave it. But then in my mind, I'll never modify a set because at that point, might as well make my own.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. That's a cool perspective. I like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Adam. It was awesome having you. And before we end this episode, do you have any social media or other platforms or things of the sort that you'd like to plug?
The only one I got is my Instagram at the builder. I'm not giving out my YouTube channel yet. Maybe one day I'll have to reboot it. That's what my mom's
I
saying
see.
to do.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna
yeah, my
ask that.
Instagram.
Do you think you'd like to, now that you've, I guess, uh I guess, practice your expertise more, would do you think you'd like to come back to YouTube at some point and start doing videos?
Possibly. I just need time.
That's
That's
fair.
mainly what I need. Between work and school and building, I'm pretty busy.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so add the builder on Instagram then. That's it.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. It means the world, and I hope you enjoyed. Links to the things and people we talked about will be in the description as always. New episodes now release once every 2 weeks on Tuesdays for TFOL Talk Tuesday, and you can find updates, announcements, and more regarding the podcast over on my Twitter or Instagram, both of which are at Doodlebricks. Anyways, that's all for now, and we'll see you all later.